My name is Marius and I'm the WorkPool Product Architect, and I'll be hosting the session today. And today I'm joined by the lovely Jackie, one of our WorkPool consultants. We'll also be taking you through some of the screens like the triggers and the web form campaigns. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. I trust you are all already experts. This is session number 3 of 4. And the goal today is to look at layering things like the triggers and the web forms on top of processes. We are taking a renewal or annual review process that we're building together. And the idea is obviously that you take from this the bits and pieces that you need to go and apply it in your own business. So please do make the effort of also investing the time to get to know these tools and the functions a bit better. For those of you who don't know, web forms have been part of WorkPool for more than 5 years. So if you haven't been using it, if this is the first time you're using it, you kind of also need to ask why that is. And especially I think currently with the focus on automation and AI, these are important steps that you should take in preparation for what is to come. The agenda for today, we're going to look at the last bit in terms of the expressions to show you how to link up a process to a view and how you can push and pull data between the two. We're going to set up some email and text message triggers to show you how you can automate that. And then we're going to be looking at the web forms, pretty much the almost culmination of the work we've done in the first 2 sessions to show you how to equip your process with that function. So just to put everyone in the loop, in the first session, we explained how do you document and map your process. So completely outside of WorkPool, you can use an Excel document or a piece of paper. Most of the time and effort and discussions will go into mapping the process. So don't underestimate that. And if you get that right, the building goes quite quickly. In this first session, we discussed the basics of flows and transitions, the building blocks on WorkPool, and the process development or process definition. And then in the second session, we discussed attributes, the different types and fields that you can use on a process, how to link those to the steps and the flows in the process. And we covered the theory in terms of the conditions and expressions and how to use them. So after session 2, we also had a group training session for those of you who wanted to dive deeper, get to know the advanced features like forks and joins and conditional expressions and playing around with different environments. And obviously, with all of these things, there's no substitute for experience. So the more you can play with it and the faster you can get it done after training, the better. At least you've got the benefit of these sessions being recorded so you can refer back to them, but don't wait. The sooner you can get going, the sooner your processes will flow and your business will improve. So in the first session, we covered the basics of the building blocks. So just as a reminder, these green blocks would be tasks and we call them flows. The links that connect them, those are called transitions. And then attributes are the fields that you can populate as you go through the process. And all of these things combined is your process definition. And that's what you would export from your testing environment. And that's what you would import in your production environment when you're done. In the second session, we expanded that renewal process a bit, where we actually put in some attributes for you to play around with. We identified at each step what the information would be that we would want to collect, the types and fields that you would attach to that, and we discussed the various different types. And we looked at the expressions and how you can use that to control the logic and how the process would flow internally. So for today, I've just expanded the story a little bit. The process remains essentially the same. I've just fiddled with this step B and C and D a little bit. And I've kept the same attributes. I've put in a few examples here. So I'm just going to step you through it. For those of you who weren't in the first 2 sessions, the idea here is that you have a process that will govern the rules around an annual review or an annual renewal, if you like. I've changed it so that we cater for two types of clients, one that's employed and one that's not employed. So it could be someone who's retired, and your process will flow differently depending on that. So if someone is currently employed, we're going to add a web form asking them to attach the latest IRP5 assets and liabilities, and essentially do the work for you on that task. If someone is unemployed, maybe they're retired, then it will skip that step and go directly to the pre-consult preparation. And I'm not going to discuss the conditions around transitions today, but just so that you know, if a client, for example, indicates that their address changed on the web form, you could automatically kick off things like a FICA process or requesting proof of address or something like that from the web form. So those things are kind of implied. So we're not going to have time to go through them, but just keep that in mind. So my process now, I've set up the first step to be pre-consult planning and preparation. So this is where the assistant will chat to the advisor, have a look at what they did the previous year, perhaps any queries and questions that came in during the year, and prepare for the review. The second step after that would be to confirm the employment status. I've created a new view called Portfolio. I've also put in the names here of the views that I'm using and referring to. So the primary email address and mobile number, I'm pulling that from the person view, and I'll show you how to do that. I've also put in a read-only view to put in the birthday so that you can see the age of the person. Perhaps they're close to retirement age, and that will have an impact in terms of the way that you prepare the process. And I've also introduced something called an employment status, which for this example, I've put it on the process, but you actually could just look at it on the view and pull it from there without needing to put it on the process. But for today, I have put that in there. You'll notice a little icon here and at the bottom. And what Jackie will show you is how to add triggers. So there's going to be a text message or SMS trigger attached to task B, and then an email trigger attached to step D over here. And yeah, I'm also going to just show you in the last step how the final results, so when the advisors completed their review, how their final record of advice or draft documents will be pushed automatically to the view in the directory. We're not going to cover advanced triggers and script triggers and things like that today. We're just going to be focusing on email and SMS triggers and then looking at the web forms. And then lastly, just in terms of step W over here, in case someone is employed, I've created actually two web forms for you to look at and play with, and we'll show you how to send that through to the clients. Right, so just last bit of theory before we jump into the triggers and web forms. You might recall from the last session, attributes can be used as in part of your formulas and rules. On a process, any attribute, you just copy and paste the name of that attribute, and you surround it by a dollar curly bracket at the beginning and a curly bracket at the end. So that tells WorkPool go look for the attribute called age and take the value of that and compare it to whatever else you've put in here. So for those of you who completed the advanced training, you'll notice that you can actually combine and add several conditions whenever you're dealing with this. And what we want to do now is to take your current process where you might have things like an email address and mobile number, where up until now you had to put that in, and we want to pull that from the view that's sitting in the directory. So in my example, Mr. Lorenzo Fox over here has got a person view, and there's a mobile number and an email address that's attached to that view. And I want to pull that information into the view over here. For those of you who also don't know, these views are completely dynamic. You can add and remove attributes, and you can build your own views on WorkPool. You go to the directory administration section, you click on the view definitions, and you will then click and select on the one that you want to look at. So in this case, I'm going to open person. And what I'm looking for, so this is your template, basically your view definition on the right, and this is what you will see in the directory on a client folder. I'm looking for the names, the unique names that match the attributes that I want to link to. That's basically all you need. So on a process, you have the attributes. On a view, you also have attributes. And when you link the two, you must just tell Workpool which one to link to which other one. And as we said last time, the types must match. So you can't put an email address into a mobile number and vice versa. So just keep that in mind. And the expression to do that, basically you take the name of the view definition. So it's the same either here on the left in the view or on the view definition, and you copy and paste the attribute name. And that's how you create your expression. So it's view and attribute. You put it view and then in round brackets, the name of the view definition. The reason we have it in brackets here is that your view definition can actually have spaces in it and other characters like dashes and ampersand. So we want to just be able to take whatever you have in these brackets and take that as the name of the view definition. We'll go look for and find that view, and then you just say dot, and you copy and paste the name of the unique name of the attribute in there. And that is how you determine the name of the expression that you can use on your process. So I will show that to you, but if the folder that you're starting the process in does not yet have a person view or a portfolio view, it doesn't matter. Workpool will then create that for you automatically via the process. So just essentially the step after this, once you've got your expression, you go back to your process designer, you right click to get the attribute actions. We discussed all of these options last time, but basically on each step, you can say of all my attributes, some of them I want to look, I want to read, I don't want to change. Some I do actually want to update or set. Some of them I just want to actually view and pull information from the directory. So it's a read one. And then on the right-hand side in my expression column, which we haven't discussed yet, that's where you paste your expression. So you take what you've got, and because it's an expression, you just surround it by a dollar curly bracket, and that's how you link that field in this step to the view in the directory. Okay. It's okay if it doesn't work the first time or you make mistakes. That's why you test. Just go double check that your syntax is correct. As I mentioned last time, it's better to just copy and paste things than trying to transpose or type them, because any finger trouble can cause a problem later on. So I normally go copy and paste these things. I put the name in the round brackets of the view, and I put the attribute name. Just again, copy and paste from there. So if we jump over to Workpool quickly to show you how that works. Let's see if the process is active. Yes, right. So I'm going to say, let's start a new process for Mr. Fox. Oops. So if I click on this icon, just to show you, at this point in time, there's a person view, but there's no portfolio view yet. So I'm going to say, let's go. Now, when the process starts, these fields don't have any information. It's pretty much empty. You'll notice that a red triangle has appeared over here to indicate that there's some kind of special action, and it tells you that this is actually linked to a view. So if I click on the blue bubble, you'll see it's automatically pulling the information from the view into this address. So if there's any significant notes, no, none, no action, prepare, normal report, and the advisor is going to be Roger. I say update. Right. If I want to change the number, so I phone the client perhaps, or I know that actually this number has changed and that's not correct, I click on update. It will automatically push this information through to the view when I complete this task. So at this point, this information is still sitting in the process. The moment I say complete, Workpool then pushes that information through to the view. If I click there now, I can see that the number has changed. Let's put a 0 at the end. And if I go look at the audit trail, it will also indicate that that has changed from the process. So it's all covered, all connected, and no extra work required for the person. I click on my next step. You'll see over here, birthday. It's not an attribute that I've filled in, but if I click on that, it pulls through the birthday value or the birthday date as a read only. And for people who perhaps have confidential information, or you're dealing with POPI or GDPR issues, this is often a way to work around that, where you can say, for this specific transaction, I need to know the income of the person. I'm not going to make that available generally on the directory for everyone. I can pull through information and make it visible to someone for that transaction and then take it away again after it's done. So it's quite good in terms of that to manage your special confidential information. And this can also be used in rules, which we'll show you a bit later on. You don't need to have these attributes on the process. You can say, if age is bigger than 65, don't even ask me. It automatically goes down a certain route in the process. And then in my example here, we say, okay, is the person employed? No. Let's make them unemployed. Date and time of consult. So I'm going to make that, let's say, Friday the 3rd, let's say 4 o'clock. And at this point, as I showed you, there's no portfolio view. So I'm going to tick the box and say submit. If I go back, look at Mr. Lorenzo's view, you can see it's automatically created a portfolio view, and it's pulled the employment status and updated it for me on the view. So again, it's a way where you can, when you're doing a client take on, for example, you don't need to give staff access to these views to create them or edit them. You can use a process completely to cover any transactional data that you want to manage. Right, so I've done that, confirmed all the details, and now my process can continue pretty much as before. So I'm going to just stop it there for this part, but hopefully you can see the value and the benefit that this will offer you. Just in terms of how do we use it, or my kind of recommendations in terms of typical places. I mentioned the POPI and GDPR is one of it. For many of us, we have information registers in terms of data, contact information, and information that you have to maintain. Using processes and linking them, these attributes, to views, mean that you actually only have one place where you need to maintain this information. There's not multiple sources. You can obviously work around the access control issues, because in WorkPool, the data, you can use that within a process. You can do your quality control this way. So when there's a contact person that's changed, you can use the process to automatically detect, update, and change all the different places on the views and in the system that you might be using that. So you don't rely on humans to have to remember where to do these things. And then another benefit is that if you have something like a services view, let's say you have multiple, let's say short-term medical invest, you can actually get, if someone's changing an address, automatically kick off tasks to other departments based on views without needing to tick any boxes or remind anyone for that. So there's a lot of benefits in taking control of your data using the processes. And I think this generally, managing dirty data, obviously it helps quite a bit with processes. And with all the plans around automation and AI, the quality of your data still is quite important for the success of whatever you want to automate. And these are the typical first steps you would need to take, is to lock down and make sure that you're working with quality data. Otherwise, you're going to get weird things happening when you're adding and clients into the mix as well. We always say get your own house in order first before you expose and share this with the outside world. Right, so I'm going to hand over to Jackie. I'm not sure if you want to share your screen, Jackie, just to maybe go through the different types of triggers.
Yeah, I will do that after the slide. So basically, what is a trigger? A trigger is an automated action. So whether it's an automatic email that you want to send out, an automatic SMS that you want to send out, or even other stuff that we can use script triggers for. So we have 3 types of triggers. We've got the email trigger, as I just mentioned, to automatically send an email, a text message trigger to automatically send a text message or an SMS. And then we have script triggers, which does require some coding from our development department. They can basically be used to update pretty much anything. For example, if you want to send or fetch information via API from a different system, a script trigger can assist you to do that. Maybe for Fika, if you're using beeswax, a script trigger can drill into beeswax, send the information to beeswax to get the Fika reports, pull them back into your workpool and update your process. You can also use them internally within workpool to do calculations. If it's a date calculation, you have a date in your process and now you need another date, let's say 30 days from that original date or from the date that the process was created. So anything that you need to be automated, we can do via script trigger. To update your script triggers, you can add them onto the flow that they relate to.
Shall I
via the process
stop
diagram.
sharing and then allow you to share?
Yeah.
Or? Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I think while you're sharing there, just for the audience, I mean, we use script triggers in WorkPool as well. For example, our monthly billing happens through a billing process that automatically goes and collects all the data in terms of the subscription, the hosting, and any other services. It automatically creates a batch file for uploads, and that is then submitted to the debit order service all automatically using script triggers. So we try to use our tool ourselves as much as we can, and we're using script triggers quite a bit for that, and many of our clients do too. And I think in session 4, part of the time will be spent on showcasing some of the work that other people are doing and we're doing to give you some ideas as well. Back to you, Jackie.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's go into the process that Marius was busy with. So as I say, you do edit them via the diagram. And let's go to our flow C, which on the image that Marius showed us earlier, we've decided we're going to add an SMS trigger. So
I think I've done it on D actually. Sorry, the one above it, B, where when they confirm employment status, at that point we're sending out an SMS to the person to just confirm that we have set up their appointment.
Apologies. Getting myself all confused here.
It's okay, so it's my story.
When you right-click on your flow, then you'll see there's an option at the bottom, flow triggers. This one, as you can say, because this process is active and in use, generally you can't edit anything else, but you can edit your flow triggers. So it comes up with a screen. The important thing to note is your default sending, does that have a green tick? And your text message, does that have a green tick? It will not allow you to add a trigger if your sending services are not active. So let's create a new trigger. So type of trigger is a drop down, and you'll see we've actually got 4 options here, but the HTTP request is not active as yet. That will be something that's coming. So we want to add a text message trigger. Are you going to give your trigger a name? Primarily, if you have more than one trigger on a specific flow, because you can add as many triggers as you want. If you have more than one, it just makes it easier to identify which one if you need to make changes or edit it. So this is an appointment confirmation. The trigger on. So you need to decide if you want to trigger this SMS when you mark your task as completed or when the task kicks off. The difference being basically, where do you want this SMS saved? So in this particular example, because we have now completed, we've made contact with the client, we've arranged the appointment, this is just confirming that appointment. I'm going to add this one to the completion of the task. If it's a SMS or an email that you're sending out that you maybe will now want to follow up with the client, you might want to put it on creation of the next task so that your original SMS is linked to the task that you're busy working on. So this one is task completion. Choose the mobile number attribute. So in order to use the trigger, we have to tell the trigger where to send this SMS to, because remember, there's no user interface here at all. This is automatically going to happen. So you will need to have a mobile number type of attribute in your process that we can select. And then you'll go and choose your text message template. So this will be preset. And here we've got our confirmation of appointment template. And then it's asking you, who do you want to send this from? So obviously for us to save it, we need to have a user linked to this SMS. So you can use resource assigned to process or the owners of the process or flow on the task. So we are going to choose the resource assigned to this flow task. And then escalate errors too. So with anything, no matter how well you plan, sometimes things go wrong and maybe there is no mobile number, or maybe somebody disconnects the SMS sending service and this automated trigger cannot happen. You need to advise somebody. So you're going to create resource groups, plug people in that will keep an eye out so that if this trigger fails, somebody gets notified and can take action by manually sending out the confirmation. And let's choose our compliance person and we can save. You'll see now that this flow has a little green block at the bottom, and that is your indicator that this flow has a trigger linked to it. So any type of trigger will show. And because it's on completion, it's showing below the flow. If it was on creation, it would show at the top of the flow. So you know where the trigger is kicking off. Let's go and add the email. That is flow D, if I remember.
I think this is while you're adding that, Jackie, we did video for you guys to look at on email templates and text message templates. So as part of the email confirmation that goes out afterwards, we'll include that link just to show you how to create your own text message templates and email templates. And yeah, that will also cover, I don't know, Jackie, did you also put expressions in that?
No, I'll be creating a new video to do the expressions, or I kept it separate. Okay, so now type of trigger, we want to choose the email trigger. Again, we've got the name, so this is a reminder of the appointment. And this time we are going to fire this off at task creation because we want our email linked to this task, not the previous task. Choose your email template that it relates to. Now the email subject, you'll see it's blue because it's not required. And basically it's, if you don't want to use on the email template, maybe template for manually sending emails in some processes, and you're using the same template on the trigger, maybe you want to specify that this is from a no reply email address so that the receiver knows that they cannot reply on this email. So you can overwrite the subject. If you leave it blank, it will use the template subject. Then the send from address. So this doesn't have to be an actual mailbox. The trigger emails will be sent through the default SMTP server. So you don't actually, it doesn't have to be a valid. So a lot of the time you might want to specify that this is a no reply. It's not coming from the user, it's coming from the system. So maybe no reply renewals at zcorp.com. So you can make up your own email address, and same with the send from name, just so that it doesn't get rejected. So we can say that this is a no reply. It's mailbox. Okay. Then your send to email address will have to be an attribute in your process with the email address that you want him to send this to. The send to name, it's optional. You don't have to put anything, but it will look for any string type of attributes, and you can just select them from the drop-down list. CC email address and CC name is optional. If you want to maybe CC somebody inside your office, double check every email that the trigger send out and make sure they went out correctly, or you could BCC somebody into the email. You can set your sensitivity and priority if you want to make this confidential. And then you've got 3 options to add attachments. So if there are documents that you're linking to your process that you want automatically sent to your clients, you can link those attributes to your trigger. And once again, we've got our escalate errors, where you'll choose the resource group who will take care of any triggers that fail.
Cool. So I think just adding some lessons learned. So we typically do distinguish between automated communication and communication sent by people. So we like to use the no reply to know, so that the user know it was sent automatically. And then in terms of those attachments too, you could obviously have things like previous policy schedule or last record of advice, something for the previous year, get attached to that reminder automatically. So you would just need to word your email template appropriately. Right, so let's demo that to them, Jackie, unless there was something else you wanted to add in there.
No.
Cool.
Are you going to demo, or do you want me to?
I shall demo. Okay. Can you see my WorkPool screen? I'm assuming that's yes. So we're going to go to masterclass. We're going to start a new one. Let's go back to Mr. Fox and say save. Okay, like before, it's going to say test, test. We've pulled in the details. It's going to go back to Roger Smith. And what we're expecting to happen now is that when I tick this box, so I phone the client. Sorry, this is the pre-consult task, so nothing's happening here. We linked the trigger on the second one. So over here, I'll confirm. At this point, the number and email address is actually now required, so I can't continue without it. And I'm saying I'm scheduling this for 1 o'clock on the 1st of July. I'm going to tick this box and say confirm. So Jackie wired the trigger to the completion of this task. So the actual text message is on this task. And was it Jackie? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was.
Ah, there we go.
Sometimes takes a few minutes.
Yeah. So obviously it kicks off that message and sends it via the backend gateway. So if it doesn't appear immediately, it will just give it a couple of seconds, and there you can see. So it's automatically pulled through the name of the advisor and also the date and time in the SMS that's gone out to that number, which is a fictitious number. Confirmation of the pre-consult. So in this case, looking at the process, we're not going to do any additional work here. I'm just going to drag and drop some document. Let's go with that one and say update. And what we've done is this annual review is the task that's going to go to the advisor. So just to remind you that we've linked the trigger to the annual review task because we want the advisor, when they work on their task, to see that an email has gone out to the client. Right. So have a look, play around with it. As always, please test first on your test environment so that if there is a problem, maybe there was a expression or something missing or incorrect, that you can pick that up before it goes to the production environment. So getting to the fun bit in terms of the web forms and flows. So in WorkPool, we have this feature, as I mentioned, it's been here for 5 years already, where we allow you to create, or not, you don't even need to create it. You can expose a task to an external party for them to basically do the work for you. The benefit of using a web form is that it's captured only once. So it's done directly and securely from the source, the client. There's no needing to copy and paste data, email data, misinterpretation of data. Whatever they upload and add is captured immediately and directly onto WorkPool, and there's full audit control around that. You can control the quality of the data. Obviously, you can check and set the types. So things like dates, integers, decimals, depending on the type of the attribute, WorkPool will enforce that the data in there matches that type. And in the process, you can also build in steps in the process to check and verify that it is correct before it commits it to the directory. So just because they put it in, you don't have to write it to the directory immediately. There's also no need for you to actually build and maintain content. So many of the other software solutions, you have to go build forms. WorkPool, you don't need to do that. It's smart enough to create it dynamically and on the fly. So all you need to give it is a template to say use my look and feel, my branding basically, and it will automatically inject the content for you. So even if you provide a service to multiple, let's say advisors, you can use their photos, their signatures in terms of individualizing that content for them. Web forms are mobile ready, so they can be completed on a mobile phone. Obviously, you can WhatsApp the link to someone, you can send a text message or an email, and directly from their phone, they can upload things like photos and documents. They don't, obviously, they can do it from their desktop and normal email client, but it's also possible to do that from the mobile phone. You can control access to these links. So web form links are visible only to, for a certain amount of time. And once that transaction has been completed or the time has elapsed, then it obviously expires. And then in addition to using web forms on normal tasks on processes, you can also use it for sending out campaigns. So if you have a, let's say, annual satisfaction survey or fit and proper check, or just generally need to check your POPI data, you can send out a bulk email. And the benefit of the campaign is that WorkPool only starts a process if someone actually completes the web form. So you don't have 1,000 processes to maintain. You only maintain and get the ones where people actually act and react on those campaigns. And then just in terms of managing your POPI and GDPR risks, obviously by getting the client to fill in the data, you by default get their consent. Your data interception is a non-issue because the client is committing and sending that directly. So the ability for someone to intercept and manipulate that for purposes of fraud is managed also because your web form data goes directly onto the system with an audit trail and checks and controls to manage the security. To activate a web form, so to convert a flow to a web form is quite easy. You right click and you say, I want to link a web form. So the process needs to be inactive, so in the design state still. And you can also link multiple web forms. So as I mentioned, if you have, let's say, multiple people that you do work for, you can tweak the branding depending on the client involved or the service provider involved. And that's it. So I click, link it, click on save, and now that task has become web form enabled. So let me just go back to this one over here. Let's see if the email, nope. So apologies, we'll have to check and see why that did not go out. I'm going to start a new process now because in this case, we actually look for someone who is employed. We're just going to change Mr. Fox to be employed. So I click on save. Happy. There's 2. Obviously, the advisor could have been pulled from the view as well. So in the demo, we're adding the advisor, but that could be an account manager or an advisor that's pulled from the view. I'm going to change the status to employed. I'm going to make the date and time, let's say the 29th, 1 o'clock. Click on update. And now you'll see it's going to go the request for information, the web form route. So click on save. Let's go down. So the task looks like a normal task. We know that clients often don't do the work and we still need to do the work for them. They might reply and send you an email with the content. It's not a problem. If the email comes in, you can link it to the task and Roger, who's assigned to this task, can complete it directly. Or the hope would be that the client now completes the work for you. So a new icon appears over here, which is the send invitation. If I click on that, it asks me, okay, just confirm, who do you want to send this to? I'm going to say it's actually Lorenzo. You can determine for how long you want this to be active. You obviously don't want the client to provide you the details after the consult. So you can have this open and limited to like the due date of this task, at which point you'll complete it so that your process can continue. And you have different form authentication options. At this point, the public one is available to you. The other ones depend on other criteria. So public means that this will be sent as an email link, and anyone with access to that email during this period of time can click and complete it once, and that information will then be stored on WorkPool. So if I click that, the important bit is this link over here. It's not pretty, so I wouldn't send the email out like this. What we typically do is I'm just going to cut that and say, well, I've actually got a pretty template set up for my consultation confirmation. So in our WorkPool, we would automate this, but I've seen this is typically what we look at or find in other people's WorkPools. They've got all these markers and things where they want to remind people to change and update things. The template can either pull through a document from the file section automatically, as it's done over here, or as I said, you can actually click and link and browse and update the client's previous financial plan or assets and liabilities from the previous year. So all I do is I click there and I paste my link in there, and now it has become a hyperlink. You clean up. As I said, we wouldn't do this, but I know you guys do, so we can say Lorenzo, and there's my email. If I don't get any feedback from the client, I want to obviously follow this up again on the 26th, so I set my next action and I click on send, and out it would go. So you'll notice this web link over here is a hyperlink. I'm going to open this in a different browser so you know that I'm not taking a chance. It is a real link. And you'll see it's pulling through my Z Corp branding. So this is a template that I've configured. It's pulling all of this text directly from the process that I've built. So there's no need for me to go design this process, this form. It automatically updates it based on the content there, and I'll show you how to do that mapping. So let's just complete it quickly. Up here's my assets and liabilities sample document. I can ask questions like, is your residential address changed? No. Contact details are the same? Yes. Or no. Bank account changed? So whatever you put in here, you can then build in rules on the process to either kick off more work or just continue as usual. Let's update my will at the same time and just say, need to leave early, I don't know, to pick up kids or something, just for the specific comments for that meeting. Click on submit, and it says thank you, and your unique reference number is that. So we also communicate the unique task number to the client. So if there's a query or a question, they can obviously refer back to that. If I go back to this task, you'll see that it's now automatically been signed off. It has recorded all the content that the client filled in on the web form. I can no longer change that, and it's automatically kicked off the next step in the process. So in this case, the client did the work for Roger, and it can now continue to the next pre-consult preparation, and the process continues automatically after that. So it really is as simple as that. You are in control of what the user or client would see. So as per the template, that section at the top was actually read directly from the flow, the task description. So whatever you put in there is what we will pull in and show on the web form. And then in terms of all of these attributes, obviously they link to the attributes on that flow. And there are three things that you can control. The one is the name of the attribute. So you basically tell the client what to attach. Then if you have a description or more details, like if it's a proof of address, it must be, not older than 3 months, etc., etc. You can document all of that in here, and that will pull in there. And then on the attribute action itself, if you mark that as compulsory, then it will only allow the client, well, it will only submit the form if you tick the box or upload information into that field. And as I mentioned, you can set up multiple templates without changing your process, and you can control what the user will see that's receiving that email. It is mobile friendly, so again, they can open and view that email, click on the link, and complete the details directly on their mobile device. To configure the web form is also fairly straightforward. You can, as part of the wrap-up, will send you or provide you with a template that you can use, which is WorkPool branded. The only step that you might need help with is actually changing that document just to put your own label in there. If you want to be quite advanced or put different styles and things, then WorkPool support will have to just give you a quote in terms of what work that would entail. But what we typically do is we go to files, we check our template in there, and then you go to the task admin section, go to web forms, and you create your web form record. All it needs is a name. It will give you, or there's a place where you put in the unique code. So that is whenever you export your process and imports it on the production server, WorkPool will match that code there. So it automatically links the web form for you. You click to browse into the file section. You go find your template that you want to set up. The default actor and entry folder, those typically play a role in campaigns where there is no person yet. And we can use things like a WorkPool automation bot as the user, and an entry folder is if WorkPool could not find the correct folder to put it in, which in 99% of the times it will. There will be a default fallback, and then your form authentication is what you would basically prompt the user for, if anything, to make sure that there's confirmation of who received that. And then step 3 is just go link the web form or web forms to your flow, and that's it. So it's really quite easy to web formify or enable your existing processes to do that. So in the limited time we've got left, Jackie, I think we've got 8 minutes. We're just going to go and also show you the web form campaigns. So as I mentioned, the campaign, you don't need to start a process. The process gets started automatically. You can also send invites out to multiple parties. So Jackie, I'm going to hand over to you just to scan through these quite quickly.
Yeah, so as Marius mentioned, you're going to use a directory report. You're going to send out a web form campaign to multiple parties. When they submit their form, their web form, a process will be generated. So you don't have the process to start with. It only gets started once the recipient submits their form. You can monitor those invitations to determine who's opened the web form, who's completed the web form, and who hasn't even clicked on the link as yet. And then to launch a web form campaign, you need to set up a web form. You need at least one active process where the first flow is linked to the web form. Because the campaign is starting the process, the very first flow has to be the one linked to the web form. And then you need a directory report to extract the email addresses for who you want to send the invitations to. So we're going to do a very quick demo on that. You want to see my screen? Oh, that email did finally go on that task.
I'll have to check and see why it took so long, but yeah, at least it's good.
Yeah, so here I've got an accounting VAT 201 for my monthly or my bi-monthly clients that I've set up. And if we go and look at our flows, we can see that the very first flow has been linked to the web form. And I'm going to ask the client, let's put in our return period, confirm all the bank transactions, confirm all creditors' transactions have been captured, attach their VAT report, attach their detailed ledger, and then allow them to add any notes, which is optional, that they might want to advise the accountant of. So we're going to go to directory. We're going to choose a pre-existing report that we've got configured. And right at the bottom here, you'll see the option to create a web form email campaign. Let's run our report, and we're going to use our business email address to send this to, and click next. Now you'll see it comes up with a list of all your clients, and you can select or deselect if you know, oh, wait a minute, this person's we're no longer submitting their VAT. Let's take them off the list. Once you're happy with your list, you click next down at the bottom. Okay, then it's going to ask you for a campaign name. So if you are using web form campaigns on a regular basis, you might have more than one campaign. This being a VAT report, it does happen that clients just don't get back to you with their information. So you might still have last month's active. So you just want to say VAT 201 returns June 2026. Give it a name that you will recognize later. Choose flows. So yeah, you can see we've got a satisfaction survey that also the first flow is a web form, or we've got our obtain reports for my VAT 201, which is the one I want to use. If you have a main task number, maybe a recurring task to remind you to run this report each month and send these campaigns out, you can link all your emails to this task number, or you can leave it blank. And then this is how long do you want this to keep this active until. So by default, it'll be active until midnight, but we can change this and say, well, I'm going to give my clients up to the end of the month to submit it. Your hosted server address, which is from the HTTPS up to the myworkpool.co.za or .net, whichever one you have. And you pop that in there, and then it'll use the default SMTP. And it's just showing you an example of the template. So in this case, it's not a personal template that you set up, just like Google or SharePoint or any of those where you're sharing files sends an email from Google or from SharePoint. Campaign will be sent from WorkPool. So we're going to send out our campaign emails. There are quite a lot of clients, so it takes a minute or two. Okay. Now, if we go to one of our directories, I'm just going to run that report to get all my directories. Apologies, I just find it the easiest place to find the email. So there's the email that will go out to the client.
Because we have limited time, maybe just go to the email and campaign section to show them also where they can track that.
Okay, I just want to do one so it shows the different status.
Thanks.
Okay, but there's Maurice's one. So yeah, under the web form invitations in your email box, you can see all the invitations that we sent out. This is the manual one that Marius did. And these ones, because they are linked to a campaign, you can see the campaign name there. You can see the status. So these have been sent, which means the client hasn't opened it, hasn't done anything. That one's actioned. And the other status that you'll see is opened, which is clients clicked on the link, but they haven't submitted their form. You can also click on the actual campaign, which will also give you a list for this campaign only of everybody that you've sent it out to. And you've got a little context menu on the right-hand side where you can extend the expiration date. Maybe your client's gotten back to you and told you, sorry, he's got a delay. He won't be able to do this until next month. You can resend that invitation. You can cancel the invitation if a client sends it manually and isn't going to do it. You can also, if you missed anybody, you can, right at the bottom, you can add a new email address and the entry folder, and it will send the web form to them.
I think I just wanted to add that for other applications, anything where you need to communicate or request information in bulk, whether it's monthly or annually or quarterly, a campaign would make sense for that, as opposed to an individual process where you target a specific party in that. I think it was important that we also just get people to actually take action on all of these things. It is really an introduction to web forms and what you can do with it. Obviously, for many of you, the processes come first. And even if this process has only got one step, you can still use a web form for that. And a lot of the work that we're doing here is to also prepare you for the future and the automation and AI functions that will be coming, so that you don't have a big gap to fill in right at that point. So please do take the opportunity, set some time aside, get cracking, and get your processes to flow, because that means that when you add the automation, things will, there's not a big gap for you to catch up on. Right, I think we've pretty much run out of time, but we're spot on. If you have any questions, please shout. We will be around a bit longer, obviously. In session number 4, we'll cover a bit of reporting. We'll look at some of the advanced script triggers to give you some ideas if you ever want to invest in some custom work and development. And we'll showcase also some of the existing things like process overlays that you can use, maybe some other automation functions, and perhaps even the document generation side, which is where you can generate documents from content that you have in your process and on the directory. Daniel, any questions from the audience?
Yep. So first, there's 2 questions at the moment. Firstly, from Afida, if you could provide some more information regarding thicker requirements and a process for setting up the API to read and return information.
Obviously, that could be taken in a few ways. We might need to just unpack that, Afida, so we understand if you want to pull data, push data, or how you would want to make that happen. WorkPool does have an API, an open API that you can call to push data into it, and also for WorkPool to make calls to the outside world. So if you're having any other tools that you want to work with WorkPool, that is an option, and perhaps you can just send us through your requirements. We'll have a look and give you some advice.
And then from Zach, the question to read verbatim, expressions to calculate client age today using birth date attributes. So
yeah, there is expression where you can, so on a date you can extract the year and the month and the day, and there's various things that it's a bit more advanced, but you can just copy and paste it from the training guide, where you can actually reference the year. So you'll say where the whatever year value is bigger than 1970 or something, and then just at this point in time, it means that every year you're going to have to just update that attribute to say, okay, what is the current cutoff for 65 or 70, or whatever your default would be. But yeah, you do get, there's other expressions you can access to take specific information from the dates to use that. Great. Well, thank you everyone. Thank you for being on this journey. Get your hands dirty, play with it. start experimenting with it. Even if you make mistakes, that's okay. It's better to do something than to do nothing. And obviously make contact with the support team if you have any specific questions. Reminder that we please ask you to not go build and test things on your production environment, but to use your test and developer environment for that, and export it there and import it when you're done. Right. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.